Hi, viewers. My name is Dr. Cranton Collins Osei. Today's episode is a special one. I'm sure most of you have watched our previous interview and you were so pleased. Some of you were so motivated and inspired. In fact, following up on that interview, we had a lot of feedbacks. And based on the feedbacks we got, we decided that today we are going to have a special one that is going to be centered on some of the things that we got or learned from the previous interview. Today, we are pleased again to have Dr. Bwaji, who was my guest in the previous interview. Today's interview, she's going to brief us and talk to us about her divorce issue, what happened in her previous marriage, why she got into it, and lessons that she learned from that. And I'm sure some of you are going to be happy because you've actually requested for this interview. So today is a special one. Welcome once again, Dr. Bwaji.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Wow. In fact, it was a pleasure to have you on the previous interview. We got a lot of comments. Personally, I got a lot of feedbacks, and everybody was wondering what happened. There was a silent aspect of the interview which spoke about your divorce.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were wondering, wow, why is she divorced? Such a wonderful woman. What is the issue? So today we decided that we want to have a special one for this session, that is divorce. Can you tell us about your previous marital life? Why you got married and a brief history of your marital life?
Well, thank you very much. I met my ex-husband in medical school. We dated for 4 years, and immediately I finished medical school, we got married. We were married for 13 years. We had 3 children.
Wow, 13 good years.
Yes.
Okay.
We stayed together for 11 years, and then the last 2 years, I was separate. So I was separated for 2 years before the marriage finally ended. And I think that just like for most people, I got married because I was sure I had found somebody I loved and who loved me back. I wanted to do life with him, raise our kids, fulfill purpose together, find joy in each other's company. Yeah, so for all the right reasons. But sometimes, like they say, life happens and you don't get things exactly the way you wish. I was very optimistic and I was so sure. I mean, I think that most people marry with the intention that they are going to be married for life, and it was no different for me. And when I entered into marriage, a lot of things started to go wrong. But I've always been a church girl, and so for me, divorce was out of the question.
Yeah.
I never imagined that I would get to that point. And so when the issues started coming up, every time I was trying to look for a solution. And looking back, I think that it is good I did. Because now I know that I checked all the boxes. I did everything that I should have done. I don't have any regrets. There are no ifs, what is, buts, would have been. I went the whole 9 yards and more. And so I think that for anybody who is married or going through a difficult time in marriage, the message here is that divorce is not the answer, really. You should do everything you can to make your relationship work. You have to. It is only after you have done everything and it doesn't seem to work and your very life and your sanity is threatened, or the well-being of your children, because a bad marriage does not just affect you, it affects children if you have them. So until you get to that point where it is threatening your life, your sanity, your well-being, and that of your children, you should do everything in your power to make it work. Sometimes divorce is not the first option. You may need to separate for a while, go for counseling, and then try and make it work. It is only after you've done all these things that it doesn't work, then you ultimately may have to go for divorce. When we make our vows, normally the old concept of vows, they would say that till death do us part.
For better, for worse.
Yeah, for better, for worse. So death is the caveat in there as the exit. But life happens, and we know that the covenant of life really is the ultimate covenant. So if you are in a marriage that threatens your life, you think that your life is at stake, then it is time to walk away. Till death do us part, but nobody should hasten the process. Yes. And so for me, when I married, some of the issues that came up were non-communication. I think it's something that runs through.
Okay, before you go there, I think it's actually going to be my next question. But when you were talking, you said you were married for 13 good years.
Yes.
And you met him in medical school. Okay. So I want to know, how did it happen? Like he saw you in medical school and he said, "Wow, I think you're pretty. I want to be with you." And you allowed, I'm sure that there was a story behind that.
Oh yes, so I think he was 2 years ahead of me in med school.
So he was your senior in medical.
He was my senior in medical school, and he was a student leader. I was a student leader too eventually, but when I went in, he was a student leader.
Okay.
And so I had seen him from afar. And there was this day that I went to see one of my seniors who used to give me books.
Yeah.
So he gave me medical books to read, and I was carrying them to my hostel. And I met my ex-husband on the car park, and he was like, "Oh, why are you carrying such heavy books? Let me help you."
Wow, that was lovely.
Yes. And so he picked the books for me, and then he escorted me upstairs to my room. And that was how we officially met. And I think I must have served him a drink then.
You gave him a drink?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I think it's Fanta lemon. I don't know whether we still have it in the system, but
the one in the bottle.
The one in the bottle, not the plastic. Those times the bottle one was more popular. So I gave him a drink, and he kept coming back every day after that. And it didn't take me long to realize I think I had fallen in love with him then. So at the time he proposed to me, I didn't have to think about it or pray too long about it.
You're already in love.
Yes.
You fell in love.
Apparently.
Or you didn't start, you fell.
Well, you can say that.
Okay.
But it was good. And we dated for 4 years. Well, at least then I thought it was good. So we dated for 4 years. And immediately I finished school, we got married. Yeah, and so that was how we started our marital life. But the thing that really started to shake the marriage for me, from the very beginning, my ex-husband started to take a lot of major decisions without even consulting me at all. And they were quite worrisome. And I tried to ask him about it and try to offer some suggestions or advice, but it never went down well. And that system continued for a long time. One of the very, very major decisions he took that really, really affected our marriage, all of its lifespan, was to decide that he wasn't going to practice as a medical doctor. And that came as a shock to me. I overheard him talking to his friends, and he told them that he wasn't going to practice medicine. So after they left, then I asked him that, really, I didn't know about this. When did you take?
So I want to know, he did not discuss that with you?
No. I heard it the first time when he was having
talking to his friends.
A conversation with his friends.
And before you guys married, did you discuss that?
Well, of course, we are both doctors, so we talked about our prospects.
I never mentioned that at a point in his career.
No. He mentioned that he probably might go into public health or something clinical.
So that he told you?
Yes.
Okay.
But I didn't see this one coming.
Okay. And
it came so early, just after house job, when really house job is like national service for us. So it is very early in your career. And so it was a shock. We had started to raise a young family. And
so you were worried about that because in your mind, you're marrying a doctor.
In my mind, I was marrying a doctor, but he not practicing was not really
the issue.
What bothered me. What bothered me was the fact that this was a life-changing decision for our young family, and I thought it was something that we both should have discussed and then come up with a plan. If you are not going to do this, what is the plan? What are you going to do in the interim? How are you going to, support the family?
So perhaps the major issue was not about him not practicing.
No, it
That
wasn't.
there was not much information
Yes,
as to even if he's not going to
communication.
practice, what is he going to do?
Yes.
Okay.
And when you decide to share your life with somebody, there are decisions that affect both of you.
Yes.
And so you always need to consult with
Yes.
your partner before you make those decisions. And
Yes.
that was a very bad beginning for me.
Okay.
And it got worse because all through the years, I never really got any closure or explanation as to why that decision was taken. And
so after you even heard him talking to his friends about that, you consulted him, but he never.
No, up until now, I never really got
really?
any explanation as to. And of course, because it was just fresh after house job, it took him quite a long while to finally find his feet again.
Okay.
And so for most parts of the marriage, at least the beginning, the burden fell on me, and I had to really work extra hard to keep my young family going. And I come from a very humble background, as you know from our previous interview. So I was trying to support my young family, and I was still supporting my mom and my younger siblings because I was a first. And it really took a toll on me. It took a lot out of me. And you know, when you are so stressed financially and in other ways, you cannot be the best version of yourself, especially if you didn't bargain for it and you've not been giving any explanations, and you just have to deal with it and accept it the way it is. It is not an easy thing for anybody to deal with. But I think that, well, at least at the time, I thought I was dealing with it well. I swallowed the pill as bitter as it was. I went to work. I've had 3 children, and for all of my 3 children, after 2 weeks, I went to work. Of course, you have maternity leave, but from where I was coming from, every CD mattered. And so once I had a mom who was reliable enough to take care of my children, and there was always not enough money. So after 2 weeks, I would leave my babies, I would express milk, I would do locum. And for any of my colleagues who know, in my earlier career, I was always doing locum.
Yeah, before we get there, I think you spoke about the one of the major challenges you had. That was the decision he made without consulting you. Are there other challenges, that as you sit here, you can remember
Yes.
challenges in the marriage which you think eventually led to the divorce? Can you aside that aspect?
Yes. So apart from that decision, you know that in marriage and in raising children, raising the family, there are a lot of things to be talked about.
Yeah.
And so when you are trying to do life with somebody who does not speak, so my ex-husband, maybe now in retrospect, there must have been a reason why, but then all I saw was a man who was not ready to communicate on any level. And I knew that there was something amiss. And many times I would go to him and ask him, is there anything that I have done or I'm not doing that is making you quite hostile? And I never got a response. So the non-communication was a major thing for me. I never knew what he was thinking. I didn't know what he was feeling. I didn't know what was bothering him. And so for many years, I kept going through my head trying to find out what it was. That it was like grass looking for something in the dark, when somebody could have easily flipped the switch on for you to see. And I kept groping in the dark, trying to find where I was not doing well. I think it was bad, but in a way it helped me because every time I was looking for ways to improve, I remember I would go on YouTube and maybe it is my cooking, let me improve my cooking. Maybe it is this. And I just kept making myself better with the hope that one day I'll be able to correct what was bothering him. But unfortunately for me, I don't think I ever got to the point where he was happy with me. And that was a major challenge for me.
So if I understand, you've already mentioned the decision he took, which he did not consult you, and now you're talking about lack of effective communication.
Yes.
Okay. So there is a saying that communication is not unilateral, it's bilateral. So is it like you were the one not talking to him, or he was the one not talking to you, or you talk to him and he will not respond? Or
Most of the time, I was a talker. I was the one who would initiate conversation, and a lot of the time you would not say anything. There was I remember one episode, like it was just yesterday. I sat him down and I wanted to know what the issues were. And just like I'm sitting here with you, and we sat there for 3 hours. I had my diary and my pen ready, and I really wanted to know what the issues were. And I couldn't get anything out of him. And really, some people used silence as a weapon.
Yeah.
And I was a victim of that kind of treatment. It is true that communication is not just verbal. Sometimes what is not being said is also communication.
Yeah.
But there's no art of finding the mind's construction in the face, you know. So I can look at your face, but I may not have that skill to be able to tell what is bothering you. The only thing I can do is to ask you to help me to figure out what the problem is. And the person can only do so much. And when it comes to communication, I think I did the best I could. It got to a point where I had to involve other people, family people. I had to involve family people. I had to involve a church. And they came in, but most of the time things went from bad to worse. And so I realized that there was no hope there. That was one of the points where I started to lose hope.
I'm sure somebody listening to this interview will be wondering, okay, so most of the time there is a saying that it is easier to point fingers at others than to point it at ourselves. Do you think, personally, there was some mistakes you also did on your part that you may have learned from, or that you may want to tell a younger generation or a lady who is watching this interview?
Yes, there is. I mean, it always takes two to tango, and although ultimately, if both parties are willing to make it work, the marriage should work. There is always contribution for both sides. And for me, before the marriage, I think that one of the mistakes that I made was the fact that I thought I knew, but I wasn't matured. I was a bit naive. And maybe I ignored some red flags, but probably it was because I didn't even know how to identify the red flags. And so that for me was a major factor. I wasn't very matured in the affairs with men, and that really played a big role to my detriment. One of the other things too that I think I contributed was the fact that, you know, from where I'd come from, my family relied heavily on me for financial assistance and assistance in many other ways. And I think that it might have contributed to the breakdown of the marriage, because it's not every partner who would understand where you have come from, and the fact that your family would have to depend on you for some years because you are the only one who is now, you know, working and earning any decent living. And so that one too was a major contributing factor. So interference from external family. For me, I think that I overindulged my family, and I paid dearly for it. Yes.
Wow. So if I understand from your part, you said you were not mature in the affairs of men. What do you mean by that?
This is well, my ex-husband was my first boyfriend. So I dated him for 4 years, and then I married him. He was all I knew. He was all my experience when it came to men. And then I think one other factor, these things can be very controversial, but they are the truth. So they must be told. Sometimes our upbringing, not sometimes, all the time, where we have come from, it really plays an important role in how our other relationships are affected. And so for me, I felt that growing up, my dad was there. He was in and out because he used to travel a lot. But I didn't have a very solid father-daughter relationship. I didn't have a very good, there wasn't much to look up to in terms of the role of a father or a husband in the life of a wife or a daughter. There was no template for me. And looking back today, I have a daughter, and I've shown her things. She knows things. She knows a little bit of what to expect from a father or from a man. I didn't have that template. And so if you don't have, you fall for anything. There are no standards, But if you come from a home where you know how your father treats your mom, you know his responsibilities towards you, when you are going out there to look for a man, you know what to look out for. You know what is good. But then I didn't have anything like that. And I wasn't experienced enough in terms of having been in previous relationships to compare and say that, now could you do, or yes, there was nothing like that at all. So for me, it was just a blank sheet of paper.
Wow.
Some people would argue that that kind of woman, the kind of woman I was, is a very good marriage material if she falls into the hands of the wrong man. But then if you are unfortunate to fall into the arms of a man who is equally as immature as yourself, or who doesn't appreciate the virtues that you come with in that naive state, then it becomes a recipe for disaster.
Wow. I think there is something that I caught from what you just said. So it means our fathers are supposed to be our first boyfriends.
Oh, yes.
They are supposed to teach us how to, as a lady, your father is supposed to give you that respect, that kind of love.
So you have to be treated like a princess. Yes.
You have a standard. Wow. So you did not have that.
No, not really.
Wow.
And it goes both ways. It's the same for the opposite sex, Your father teaches you what, as a man, this is how you treat your woman, this is how you treat your sisters. And so really, the world out there and every relationship is interconnected. And that is why the family unit is the basic unit of society.
Yes.
If you get it wrong at the family level, everything else is likely to fall apart. And so for me, in my decision to finally walk out of the marriage, one of the major things I considered were my children. In the past, before I finally took my decision, you hear a lot of people say that I'm staying for the kids because of the kids. But for me, I bet to differ. If you are in a toxic relationship, the kids, they know more than you think. They understand much, much more than you think. And there was a time one of my kids made a comment, and I realized that unconsciously, whatever was going on, they were seeing it. And they would grow up thinking that that is the norm. And I told myself that no, I owe my children that much to let them grow in an environment where it is either neutral or positive, but not negative. So I decided that I would not stay in this environment with them for them to develop the negative template. I would leave and then train them on a clean slate. And if I was lucky enough to be married again and have a husband who is a father and a role model, then good enough. Then they would know what they need to know. But until then, I'll teach them. I'll tell them what to expect, rather than stay with them in a toxic relationship and watch them see me and their father do injustice to ourselves.
Wow. Well, I think there is always two sides of the coin. Every coin has got the head and the tail. So we've been talking so much about the negatives. Can you remember any positive thing that happened, or anything good that happened in your previous marriage or relationship?
Well, I have 3 beautiful kids, and they are the best thing that happened to me. Yes, I think that is, and that is the positive thing I got out of the marriage, really. But one other thing, in life, you learn the most from your negative experiences. And so for me, the challenges that I went through, they were really hard, but the harder the challenges, the more the lessons you learn. And so every difficulty that I faced, every trial that I had to live with or to overcome, it built in me good character. I learned to move from patience to endurance to long suffering. I learned to be a better woman. I learned patience. The woman I am today is very different from the woman I was when I was newly married. I have learned a lot. I have been refined. God has humbled me, and there's no way I would have been the woman I am today if I hadn't gone through all those challenges. There are negatives, but for me, the important thing is the lessons I have learned from it. And so in my marriage, a lot of, I mean, we can't talk about everything here. A lot of really bad things happened. And for every single one of them, some way, somehow, I learned how to live with it or to deal with it. And in the places where my partner would not change, God made me change. I had to learn to live with the situation. And so, me sitting here now, if I should go into another marriage, I have learned so much. I know better. I don't think I would make the same mistakes I made before. If people should come to me to ask for advice, there's no way I would always help people to build. I'm a divorcee, but I would never encourage anybody to divorce. I would walk you through every possible lesson you need to learn. I would help you, I'll teach you, I'll show you that the final decision lies with you. But I would never recommend divorce for anybody unless you think that your life really or your sanity is at stake. And that is the point I got to. And you see, in society, people frown a lot on divorce. It will amaze you. I didn't know until I was going through it myself. And once you mention that you are going through a divorce or a divorcee, immediately there's people put you in a box.
Yes.
But it is not what it, and because we put people in a box, a lot of people are literally dying in their marriages. And they are silent because of the role that they play in society, because the position they are holding, the position their spouses are holding. They are afraid of being judged. And I think that for somebody like me, I don't have any regrets making that decision, because then I got to start my life over. It's like rebooting a system. I got to ground zero, but then I had a chance to restart everything, to put my life, find myself, love myself, get my sanity back. At a point, I felt that I was between sanity and I was literally losing my mind.
I was actually going to ask you, because we've talked about several challenges you have been through. With all these issues that you spoke about, at what point did you make the decision? Because you say you're married for 13 good years.
Yes.
And I'm sure the challenges didn't start on the 13th year.
No, they didn't.
It didn't start on the 10th year. Probably you started somewhere.
It started from the very first year.
Oh, so how you've endured for 13 years. So at what point did you make a decision? Was there a significant issue that happened that made you make that decision? Finally, I'm out. At what point?
I made a decision several times, but it took me a while to finally, do it. But I remember the very first time that I realized I had taken a wrong turn. I was then pregnant with my second son, and I was about 8.5 months pregnant. And my father had come to talk to my ex-husband about an issue that, the same issue. And that day was one of the saddest days in my life, because it was the first and the only time, though, but my ex-husband physically, he laid his hands on me. And
he physically abused you?
Yes. And I remember sitting there and I was weeping like a baby, and I told myself that I have taken.
You were pregnant?
Yes, I was.
8.5 months pregnant?
Almost 10. Yes.
Wow.
And I told myself that I have made a wrong turn. And I remember telling him that I think I have made a wrong turn, and that maybe you should just let me go at this time. And at the time, we were building a house together. We were supposed to be building it together, but he never really cared much about it. And at the time when this incident happened, I think we had just finished the foundation. And so when I told him that I think I've taken a wrong turn, you should let me go, I remember so well, he said, then find somebody to evaluate the property so that we split. And that affirmed my fears that I was really at the wrong place. And I mean, maybe that time I should have walked, but I wasn't strong enough then. I was afraid. I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't even know where I was going to live if I left him at the time. And there were so many unanswered questions for me and so much fear. And so I stayed. I knew that it was a time to leave, but I wasn't bold enough and I stayed and
So this was when?
this was in August of 2012.
Okay, so that was about how many years?
We were fourth year in
Fourth
marriage.
year. Whoa. So afterwards you endured for extra 9 years.
Endured, not enjoyed.
Wow.
Yeah, so I stayed. So it brings me to one point, that time I didn't even have a home to go back to. And so it is all for our learning. Now I told myself that I want to raise kids who would have a home. And no matter how old they are, they know that I can always go back home. I want my daughter, even if she's 50 years and she's having it difficult out there in the world, she knows that she can come home and there's a home she can come to. And so, for every married person listening to me, for anybody building a home, you need to be deliberate about building a home for your family and for your children. Maybe if my dad had a home that I could run to, I would have gone there to seek solace, but there was nowhere to go to. And so let's rewrite the narrative. Let's change things. Let's have a home so that even after our children are married, first of all, before they are even married off, the man or woman coming into your home to pick your child knows that this child is coming from a home.
Yeah.
He or she has a good support system. We can't mess with her. We can't mess with him. If I mess with this girl, her father is going to come at me. We need to let people know that our children are valued, they are treasured, and they are not being sold or given to you.
Free.
Yes, yes. We should give our children that kind of support system. And so when you do that, when the man or woman is going with her, when you say this is a treasured child, from a well-kept home. And so I cannot mess with him. I cannot mess with her. If I do something wrong, demand answers.
Yeah.
And that is one important lesson I want parents listening to me to take. You need to create a home for your children so that when they go, their children will not come back from that marital home. But if they go and there are issues, at least they can come back, have a resting place. Sometimes you fight and you are tired. You just need a place to lay down your head for a day, a week, a month. And we should be able to provide that for our loved ones when they are going through a troubled marriage. So for me, there was nowhere to go. I didn't have any money, and so I stayed. Maybe I didn't know then what I knew today. Maybe if I did, I would still have walked. But somewhere deep inside of me, I also hoped against hope that things would change. And I kept praying to God. I mean, I prayed all the time. I fasted. I went the whole 9 yards. Every year in, year out, I kept telling God that please help me fix this. I don't want this to end. Help me fix it. And I tried. And one of the things I told myself was that even if it didn't work, I may not marry again. So you let me just have the children. If I walk away one day, I have 2 children or I have 3 children, I'll not be in a hurry to marry again because I mean I have kids, and I'll be able to be calm about being single and not worried. So those were the excuses I gave myself, and then I stayed that long. But eventually nothing worked, and I still had to walk out.
Wow. Wow. Well, it's. I wish we had both of you here. So once you are done with yours, you either want to add to it. Maybe in future you'll do that. So with all that said, finally you walked away. Did you seek counseling? Did you seek a professional help? How? I mean, yeah, you made a decision, but did you talk to somebody, or you just made a decision and you are gone?
Okay, so
Because I'm sure some people are going through this in their lives. See, the reason for this interview is not for us to be telling our stories, but
the
to start,
lessons and
somebody probably is on the same journey. The things we've talked about, somebody is going through the same thing, and they're also thinking maybe they don't have a place to go, they don't have a house, they don't, some of them they are not even working. As you know, a
yes,
lot of ladies are not working. They
yes.
depend so much on their husband, and they are going through abusive relationship. And maybe who knows? All they are thinking about is divorce, but they don't know how. So how did you go through?
Yeah.
What did
Before
you
I
do?
even answer that, I think I didn't do justice to your previous question about what finally.
Yeah. Okay.
So after that episode in 2012,
Mm.
9 years into the marriage, that was 2018,
Yeah.
when I confirmed infidelity. That really broke me, and I was so sure that that was a time that I was going to walk away. But being the kind of woman I am, I never take a step without asking God. And so once again, I knew that was a time I was going to walk out, but I went back to God in prayer and fasting. I told God that now I really want to walk away. But you are my everything, and I need you to tell me what you think about this. And God spoke to me in no uncertain terms, and He was like, no, you can't walk away now. And so, although every fiber of my being wanted to walk out, I subject myself to a higher power. So I decided that, okay, then you must have a reason for this. So I'm just going to follow your lead. And after that, I went to Canada to study again. I left the marriage, I went. And one good thing for me was that all through the process, I didn't give up on my dream. I didn't sit there and fold my arms. I went to school. I became a specialist. I became a senior specialist. And then I went to do a subspecialty. And I worked hard. At a point, I started planning to start a business. And so the key thing, I think one of the things that helped me most and made my walking away so easy was the fact that I was empowered. I was working. And my ex-husband had made it such that I didn't depend on him. One of the mistakes you can make, biggest mistakes you can make, is to make your partner not to need you. And so over the years, he was absent in everything. He was physically there, but every other area of my life, he was absent. He didn't really care what I did or didn't do. And so I had learned I was married, but I was single. And I had learned to start a business, make my own money, and just be like stand on my own 2 feet. And so for every woman out there, even if your marriage is good, you need to have a livelihood. You need to learn how to make money. You need to learn how to manage money. Even if you are not making money, your husband has the money. Collect some, invest it. You can buy a house, rent it, be keeping the money somewhere. It is time women learn to take control of our own lives. I'm not saying that we should prepare for divorce, but a lot of unexpected twists and turns happens in life. What if one day you woke up and your husband has suffered a stroke and he can't work again? What are you going to do? And so whatever class of woman you are, you need to find a way. What if your husband is not there tomorrow? The kids you are bringing forth, 3, 4, 5, you are still going. If your husband is not there today, would you be able to raise those children by yourself? And so as women, we need to ask ourselves the difficult questions, and we need to prepare for the eventualities in life. Even if your husband is doing well, you need to do something by yourself. You need to have a backup plan in case the eventualities in life show up.
Wow.
And so after the infidelity, I thought that really that was a point to leave. But I stayed on for an extra 3 years because I didn't have clearance that there's a time to go. And in that period, I kind of hoped that things were going to change, that was going to stop. Things didn't really change. If anything, they got worse. And at a point when I came back from Canada, when I was in Canada, I was going through a lot of emotional stress. I went through depression. At a point, I started losing hair. So at this point, the emotional, whatever suffering I was going through in the marriage had become, I could see it on my physical body. I was losing hair. I went to dermatology. I ran all kinds of labs. There was just nothing wrong with me. My BP started to go up. I started having palpitation. I would have sleepless nights. I was every time just a second away from losing my temper. And everything about me had changed. And sometimes I remember one time one of my technicians told me that, Dr. Badi, you've come a long way. There was a time in your life where you'd come to work and even as you are doing the procedure, you are crying.
Wow.
And I didn't even remember, but that was how bad it was. I was always crying or angry, and it was not good for me. It was not good for my children. My BP was going up. I couldn't sleep, and I realized that I was losing my sanity. And that was a point where I decided I needed to leave. And before I made that decision, I spoke to a lot of people. I spoke to counselors, I spoke to family, I spoke to friends, I spoke to people who had been in my position before. I spoke to people who were divorced, and I sought knowledge. And finally, of course, I went back to God. And this time, that was the time He said, this is the time to go. And so when I left, in fact, honestly, when I left, initially, I thought that I was precipitating a crisis. Sometimes when the marriage or a relationship is that bad, you need to precipitate a crisis. And you need to do that because sometimes your partner is asleep or not taking things very seriously. So Okasa, he thinks that, oh, Okasa, you are just joking. But then when you precipitate a crisis, for me, I moved out of my marital home. My ex-husband came home one day and I left with the children. I left everything as we moved with our clothes. And I sent him a note and I told him that I was done. I was tired of talking. I was tired of asking for answers. I was tired of asking to be loved and to be respected and to be looked at. And so that was the kind of crisis I precipitated. And although in my heart I knew I was done, I was like, okay, if he wakes up from this crisis, maybe I could give him a second chance. But unfortunately for him, or fortunately for him, I don't know which word to use, he never really acted on the crisis I precipitated. And so I knew that really the marriage had run its course. And so I just had to go through it. So you cannot underestimate the importance of counseling, support from family and friends. Divorce is a difficult thing. There are days you feel like you cannot go through it. There are days you just want to die. You go through depression. It is difficult, and everybody needs a support system. One of the shocks I had was that sometimes you will not get your family's blessing. Sometimes your family can actually abandon you. And so you lose a marriage and then you lose another very important support system. But God is faithful all the time. He would raise people from wherever who would bear you up and always lean on those people. Everybody needs somebody when they are going through a divorce. I had 2 or 3 friends, they were there for me, they prayed with me, they advised me, and really they helped me through that. I couldn't have done it. God really helped. I prayed a lot. God spoke to me. Sometimes He showed me things through dreams. And it was really a spiritual journey for me as well, because through that time, I drew closer to God than ever before. And I think that process is that time in my life where I grew up the most. Yeah, let me put it that way.
So I would like to ask, what lessons have you learned through all this process from marriage to divorce that you wish you knew before you got married?
So thank you very much. I think I mentioned one thing about not being mature enough. And then one other thing I learned was that, in our society, you don't marry a man, you marry a family. And so it is so important that whatever family you are marrying into, the family accepts you. It's not just enough to have a man or woman love you. And so you really have to pay attention, not just to what is being said, but what is not being said, to people's body language. And if there is any inkling at all that the family you are entering into is not so much in favor of you being with their child, it is better to walk away. Trust me, it will save you a whole lot. And so for anybody who is not married out there who is listening, please pay attention to your spouse's family. If you feel that they don't accept you, they don't like you, they have reservations about you, and you cannot do anything about it, just walk away. There are more than one person who could help you fulfill your life mission or purpose. That is my personal conviction.
Wow.
And then the issue about family overindulgence. I think that it was one of the biggest mistakes. You shouldn't abandon your family if you get married, but then you have to deal with it with a lot of wisdom. And you have to protect your new family and your new home with everything you got, because now you have to live and cleave. And so some of us, we never really left. And it wasn't just me. I discovered later that my ex-husband was also very closely tied with his family. And so it was both ways. You have to live and cleave to your partner and build a new life together. I also learned that you cannot make somebody love you no matter how hard you try. So the best thing you can do for yourself is to love yourself and find out what you love, follow your dreams. If the marriage will work at it, it will eventually work, but don't abandon yourself in the process. You are the most important person in your life. You are the only ride or die. So don't leave yourself behind. So one of the ways in which I contributed to the breakdown of the marriage, I mean, I suffered a lot of emotional, psychological, financial abuse. And for everything negative that I suffered, I allowed it. I mean, if you do not allow it, people will not do some of the things that they did. And I stayed there long enough. I allowed it. I was permissive. And now I know better, but then I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I had that much power. And so for anybody out there playing the victim, you also play the role, and it is time to take your power back and do better for yourself.
Wow. This is so much good point, because most of the time people refuse to take responsibility for their actions, and they tend to blame everything on whoever they dealt with. I think this question has been something that you cannot leave this without answering. You remember you said that in your, I think when you were 4 years in the marriage, which you were pregnant with the second child, you went through some episodes, which I will not want to mention. I think you already said that. So after that second child, you still had another child. I mean, you knew you were in this, it was not working. Why were you still giving birth?
Well, like I told you before, I always hoped against hope that some way, somehow, the situation was going to turn around for the better. And at the time that I finally had that last child, I had actually given up on not the marriage, but on, having any more children, because things were obviously really bad. But it came at a time when my then ex-husband spoke to me in a way that convinced me that he was ready to change for the better, and he wanted us to give ourselves a last chance. And that was how he was able to convince me that by we starting over, having that third child that I had always wanted, that he had denied me of, maybe to be a good place for us to restart the marriage. So it was on that premise and on that hope that I went ahead and had that third child. Things did not go as planned, and the marriage still broke. But not a day have I regretted having that third child. She's amazing and one of the best things that happened to me. And knowing her today, even if I knew in retrospect that it was not going to work, I think I would still have had her.
Wow. Wow, awesome. In our culture, a lot of ladies or even men alike go through this kind of issues in their relationships, in their marriage. But always the comfort is, oh, just stay because of the children. In fact, as I speak, as we are having this conversation, a lot of people are in so-called toxic relationship or marriage, and they are in only because of the children. So with you, how were you able to manage the children? Do you think they are okay? Do they understand what has happened?
When I made the decision to leave my ex-husband, I actually sat all of the children down. We had a conference, a family meeting, myself and the three of them. And I told them in at best a language that they could understand that it wasn't working for me and their dad. I wasn't happy. He wasn't happy. And so we had to go our separate ways. I told them that for my own sake and for their sake, I had to separate from their dad. And I assured them that it was not their fault. They haven't done anything, that we still love them. And I tried to explain to the older two some of the reasons why I did it in their interest. I remember telling my first daughter that I don't want her, or didn't want her growing up to see the kind of example that we had set. That you think that the way her father treated me was the way she should expect
from a man,
a husband to treat her. And I also told my son, who was Benny, I told my son that I didn't want him to see his father's model as what it was supposed to be. And so I needed to get them out to a neutral place and then teach them what it is supposed to be. At least that will be better than once they see, that is what they'll pick up. So I needed to take them out of that toxic environment. And I remember after speaking to the first and the second, the last one, she was about 3 then. And she was like, "Mommy, what about me?" Like, I didn't give an example to her directly. And I told her that when she was older, I would explain things to her. And truth be told, it's been difficult for the children. There's never a divorce that does not have impact on the children.
Yeah.
But overall, it's been positive because my children see me now. They know I'm happy. Back then, I was always angry. I was shouting at them. I was not the best of moms, although I knew I was doing my best for them. But now I'm happier. I laugh. I smile. My work is going on well, so I'm able to give them a lot of the things that we had always dreamed of that we didn't have. And they are generally happy. I mean, they miss their dad and they wish that there could be more interaction with him, but we make do with what we have. Yes. And I think my children are happier now. We still have issues to deal with, and every once in a while we come back to that table where we talk about what could have been and how best to go around things. But I think that all in all, they understand, at least to some extent, the reason why I took the decision I took. And we always have an open dialogue about it. Yeah.
Wow, awesome. Your name is Dr. Apwaji Rosemont.
Yeah.
And I know that Apwaji is not your surname from your parents, definitely it's from your husband. How many years after divorce?
It's been almost 4 years of separation and 2 years since the official
let's say
divorce.
even official divorce, 2-3 years now. You are still keeping the name, but is it like a nice name, or why are you still keeping it?
Oh, not really, but there's a lot of bureaucracy when it comes to change of name and important documentation. And I've been a radiologist. I've practiced with this name for a while. I mean, I'm going to change it eventually when I get married, but until then, I felt that it was not reasonable to change back to my maiden name and then in a few years change back to my new husband's name. And so I decided that I would just wait. I mean, things did not work out, but he's not an enemy, and my children still bear that name. And me changing that name does not take away whatever I face. It doesn't take anything away from me. That's what my patients know me by. That is what my other colleagues, doctors and radiologists know me by. And so really I have nothing to lose if I kept the name until I was married again.
Wow.
Yes.
Finally, I think this will be my last but one question. What advice will you give to somebody who is married right now or thinking of getting married? Because these days, because of a lot of divorces, recently I read online that over 500,000 people from 2021 population census have gotten divorced. They are divorced in Ghana. Some are in the process. People get married these days. You were married for 13 years. These days, 2 years, sometimes 6 months. And it's a whole lot is happening. And as you know, divorce is not a good thing because of even the negative impact it has on children.
Yes.
But sometimes too, it is good, depending on where you are standing. But what advice will you give to somebody who is planning or thinking of getting married, and those who are already married? What are from your experience?
Well, honestly, despite everything that I've been through, a firm believer in the fact that marriage is one of the best institutions in the world. And as for me, dear, I'm going to get married again. It is, and so if you want to get married, it is not a bad thing. Marriage is good, but you need to look before you leap. You need to be sure that you are prepared and matured enough to handle the issues that come in the marriage. But more importantly, you also need to be sure that the person you are entering into the relationship with is equally matured and equally ready to go the long haul with you. And once you get married, you must commit yourself to making it work no matter what. Once you are committed to making it work, you find a way. We normally would say that where there's a will, there is a way. If you are prepared to go that long haul with that person, it doesn't matter the problems that come, you find a way around it. So if you want to get married, by all means do, and put in the necessary work you need to stay married. Growing is painful, but you need to grow. You don't run away, you don't abandon ship. You stay with your partner, you mature together. And if you do that, I think that marriage is one of the most rewarding institutions in the world. And really, to love and to be loved, it's one of the best things that can happen to you as a human being. Yeah.
Wow. So finally, I think today has been a very wonderful time with you, and our viewers probably are very happy. But life after divorce. So after divorce, can you tell yourself that you are happy? And what is your plan? Do you want to marry again? Looking back with the experience, I'm sure you've learned a lot. But can you tell us briefly about your life after divorce?
Yes, so thank you very much. Today, the happiest I've ever been. I mean, all the time that I was married, I was never happy. I was never happy. And I look back today, I'm like, how did I live through all those years? I'm single, I have 3 children, but my life is more fulfilling. There's a lot more meaning in my life. I love myself, but it doesn't come automatic. You have to work at it. I had to work at it. I had to move from that ground level and build my life all the way up. And if you go through a divorce and you are willing to work to build your life back up, you would have had the advantage of the mistakes you made. And so your life should only be better than it was before. And I think that life after divorce is not a death sentence. After divorce, I've dated again. And yes, I'm going to get married. I'm happy. I don't think I really lost out. I'm still going to get married. And this time I know it's going to be for life. And one other thing I want to say is that there's still a lot of stigmatization for people who are divorced, even in our churches. And so people are in church and they are afraid to speak up. If you are in any kind of leadership in church or whatever form of leadership, and you have people who are going through a difficult time, by all means, counsel them. But when that time comes and they think that they cannot do it anymore, do not let them feel like it is a sin. I think that today I'm closer to God and loved by God and appreciated by God more than when I was married. Being a divorcee does not make you any less of a human being or any less of God's child. And like I said before, the covenant of life is far above the covenant of marriage. If I had died, then my 3 children, who was going to raise them? Would they be able to raise them like the way I would? Would they love them like the way I'm doing? I've learned all these things and I'm helping people who are also married and in troubled marriages to walk through their challenges. If I didn't live through it, if I died, how was I going to teach them all the things I had learned? And so really, sometimes when you divorce, there's everything to gain. And it's better than staying in it and dying or losing your mind. Believe me, I came this close to losing my mind. Don't lose your mind and don't lose your life. Life is worth living.
Wow, life is worth living. Well, viewers, I'm sure a lot of you who are into religious space, churchgoers, Christians, you are thinking about a scripture which is also ringing through my mind that says, "What God has put together, let no what."
It's not in the Bible, actually.
Really?
It is not.
Okay, so
So religion has put
religion
it
has put it there. Okay, all right. So I'm sure now you are more than a coach to help people, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
if people are going through this period of divorce or going through separation or need even counseling in their marriage, you can reach out to Dr. Boaje and she'll be of great support to you. Thank you so much for listening and thank you so much for being with us and continue to like our videos, share and subscribe to the channel and we have more in store for you. Thank you so much, Dr. Boaje.
Thank you for having me,
Yes.
Dr. Krante.